There are many transformation tools inside of Photoshop, and one of the most powerful of those is the Content Aware Scale tool. So let's have a look at that today. I have two images which we're going to be exploring. In this first one here, we have a couple of huts sitting on a hill, and this is my original image just here, which will remain untouched. The other layers which I have here, they're all currently identical, and we're going to be doing various forms of transformations to those and making comparisons between them. So let's turn on my free transform layer, edit, free transform, that's Command or Control T. And I'm also using, guys, this guide just here. So all of the left edges on all of these layers, we're going to be dragging those to the guide. So depends on your version of Photoshop whether you need to hold down Shift or not here, but I will be holding Shift so I can make a asymmetrical transformation just here. So holding Shift, I'm going to drag that left edge in here like so. It snaps to the guide, and then I can either just press Enter or Return, or just hit the tick mark just up here. So let's do that. So you can see my free transformation sitting on top of my original layer just there. Nothing strange, guys. You can see we've got lots of distortion in there because, of course, we just evenly transformed the whole thing. So let's turn on our Content Aware Scale layer and do just that. Edit, Content Aware Scale. So holding down my Shift key, I'm going to drag to the left edge. And well before I get to that guide, you can see there's already something very interesting going on here. The hut on the left is distorting significantly while the one on the right is remaining untouched. So let me drag this all the way to the guide and let's have a chat. So I'll just commit that like so. So what Photoshop's decided here is that the hut on the right is of particular importance, while the one on the left is not so much. So Photoshop has transformed this layer, effectively not distorting this hut here on the right at all, but making some rather heavy transformations on the left here to allow us to transform this image all the way to the guide. So that's an incredibly powerful feature, guys, which is amazing in and of itself. But what I want to show you now is that we can actually take a little bit more control of this. So working with Photoshop to decide how these content aware scales actually happen. So let's turn on our next layer. This is Content Aware Scale with Amount. So edit, Content Aware Scale, and holding down my Shift key, let's drag that all the way in. So I've called it Amount because of this Amount slider just up here. So if I drag this slider down, you can see as I move this further to the left, as the amount gets smaller and smaller, the amount of distortion unique to the Content Aware tool is becoming less significant. So if I was to drag this all the way to the left, what I've actually got now at this point is just a regular free transform. So the amount is letting us control how much of that Content Aware specific scaling is actually happening. So if I was to drag this up to say 50% and commit that change, let's now compare this, the Content Aware Scale with Amount, to just the Content Aware Scale layer. So if I turn that off and on, that's the result there. So rather interesting. This is now giving us some more control over our Content Aware Scale. But if we want to take very specific control of our Content Aware Scale tool, we can actually do so by first making a selection. So that's what we're going to do on this next layer just here, Content Aware Scale with Protect. So guys, what we want to be doing is if there's any areas that we want to be protected to not be adjusted by Photoshop during this adjustment, we first need to make a selection and then save that selection. So I'll just do this very roughly, that I've actually done this ahead of time. So if I grab my lasso tool, for example, so let's say I wanted to protect this hut as well as this hut, I could actually select them both like so. I could also choose to feather that selection from the select menu, modify, feather a little bit if I wished. And then I would save this selection. So I would go select, save selection. And this will bring up a dialog box where I can actually give this selection a name and save it. But again, I've done this ahead of time, so I'm just going to quickly choose select deselect and pop over into my channels panel, because when you make a selection and save a selection, that selection is actually saved here inside of the channels panel, which is what this guy is just here, my huts channel just here. So with that already done ahead of time, let's now do a content aware scale. So edit, content aware scale, and up under the protect option just here, I'm going to choose huts, that selection that I'd previously made and saved. Grab my left edge and start dragging. Now watch closely the hut on the left. This is amazing because the image is compressing, but both the hut on the right and on the left are effectively not changing. If I get all the way to the guide, and let's actually commit that, that is incredibly powerful, which we will see in just a minute if you'll excuse me, because this has now allowed us to do a content aware scale while specifically targeting specific areas that we don't want to change. So if I just turn off this one with amount just here, because I want to compare our content aware scale with the protect option active versus not active, and you can see what a massive difference that is. It's allowed us to actually protect the look of this hut on the left as well as the one on the right just here. But you'll also notice that there is actually a lot of distortion through here because we haven't really given Photoshop much to work with. We've told it to protect this incredibly wide thing and this relatively wide thing as well, which hasn't, there's not a lot of pixels in between those is what I'm trying to say. So we could do a content aware scale with the protection enabled, but also we could then start to play with that amount slider as well. So here on our last layer, let's go to edit, content aware scale. Let's activate that protect option, turning on huts, and let's grab that left edge and drag that all the way in. And then at this point before we commit, we could actually start to play with this amount slider again. So maybe I'll drop this down to something around the 70% mark and then actually commit that. Photoshop's just having a bit of a think. It's nearly there. And there we go, fantastic. So now if I compare our last two layers, so this is content aware scale with the protection option turned on, but this one at the very top, we have the amount slider adjusted a little bit there as well. So giving us much finer control. So that's fantastic. Let me run through all of this again with you on another image, which we have just here. So here's my original image just here. Again, all of these layers are exact copies of the original. And here's my guide just here, which is actually dead center within our image this time. So let's activate free transform. So Command or Control T, holding down my Shift key, I'm going to grab that left edge, drag all the way in, press Return or Enter to commit. So if I turn off my original layer for a moment, this is what we've now created. So everything in this image looks fine, but of course the animals look incredibly distorted. So let's now go for our content aware scale option and see what kind of a result that gives us. So edit, content aware scale, holding down my Shift key, let's start to drag that in. So again, Photoshop's trying to work out what it deems to be important and not important. So let's drag this all the way to the center and then commit that. So again, Photoshop's just having a quick think here. There we go. So I'm going to now toggle on and off my content aware scale layer just here. And you can see that has made a massive difference to the animals. They actually look pretty fantastic, but have a look at this guy just here compared to this same guy just here. So you can see that laterally, he is a little bit narrower. So we'll look at that in just a few minutes from now, but generally that's done a fantastic job. Let's activate the content aware scale with a mount option. So edit, content aware scale. Let's drag that left edge in all the way to the center. And again, let's have a look at the amount slider just here. So I can start to reduce that. But in this case, I'm really not liking what this is doing because every time I drop the amount slider a little bit, those animals are getting thinner and less realistic every single time. So look, I might just leave this at say 80% just as a demo, and then actually just to commit that. But again, in this situation, I don't think the amount slider is really helping us out very much at all. Let's jump up to the next layer, content aware scale with protect. So like we did in the previous image, ahead of time, I've actually made a selection around my animals and I've actually saved them. And I'll show you that selection just now inside of the channels panel. There it is just there. So you can see I've made a selection around our 3 animals. So content aware scale with protect, edit, content aware scale. Let's turn that protect option on. Animals just there. Grab my left edge and start to drag this in. And you can see it's doing that amazing thing where it's actually transforming the image. It's laterally compressing the image, but it's actually honoring those areas that I've asked it to protect. So if I commit that, again, Photoshop's just having a bit of a think, but we'll see in a moment that it's actually now compressed our image by 50%. So it's reduced the width by a half, but these animals look identical to the original image. You can see here, guys, here's that front animal just there. Compare that to this image just here, to this animal just here, and that's amazing. Again, we've reduced the width of the image by 50%, but we haven't distorted the animals at all, and overall the composition is still looking fantastic. So I'm very happy with that. And again, I mentioned earlier, I wasn't really liking what the amount slider was doing, but just to remind you, on this last layer just here, we can actually combine the protect option with the amount slider as well. So with this guy selected, edit, content aware scale. Let's turn the protect option on. Grab my left edge, drag all the way in, and then before I commit, I can start to play with this amount slider just up here. But again, I'm not a really big fan of what this is doing, so I'm not even going to set any amount here. I'm just going to leave that at 100%. Choose OK, and leave Photoshop to have a little bit of a think there. So that's it, guys. Content aware scale. It allows you to do some incredibly powerful transformations while actually maintaining the integrity of specific areas within your image. Hope this helped. Catch you later. Thank you.